Good evening. Hey everyone, hope you're doing well tonight. Glad you guys are here. We are going to get going with our Process Thursday. If you're new here and you haven't been to Process Thursday, well, basically what I do here is I work on my business. I'm showing you how I'm creating processes that will be used in my real business. And the way that I do that is I always start off with kind of my recipe, if you will. What am I gonna do? I'm going to identify my pain point and I'm going to start to create the solution for it. Again, if you're a first-time visitor here, I'm glad you're here. This is really the opportunity for you to kind of look at how I'm creating the processes. And you can go and you can implement these things on your own for your own business as well. Now, the tool that I use the most is a tool that's called Process Moto. You'll see how I use that tonight. And before we get going, what I want to do is I just want to kind of show you the kind of the 7-step process that I continue to go through each time I start to build a process. What I think is important is I think that when we start to talk about building processes, one of the mistakes I think people make is that they go through this and they go, well, let me just try this and let me try that and let me try this. But without a formal kind of process that you follow each and every time, building processes really is no fun. It is not fun work. Now, look, if you agree with me that it's not fun work to go build processes, say I agree in the chat. That'll help me out. But like if you're sitting here and you're like, how do I build these processes, these workflows and all this other stuff? Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm going to show you how we go about and do these things, okay? So while this screen is coming up here, I just want to tell you that I do this every Thursday night, and every Thursday night I'm here at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so you're welcome to attend. And obviously the link is always different, but also it's on this channel, so if you subscribe to this channel, you'll get alerted when they're here and when they're live as well. You can always come back and watch them. So let's get going with the 7 steps. Again, like I said, the most important thing about the 7 steps is that you understand that when you have a recipe, when you have a model that you follow and you keep doing over and over and over again, it makes the whole work a lot easier. It makes the process building easier, and that's what we want, is we want easy to follow processes. Let me show you, technical difficulty. Hold on a second. I think I know the solution to it. Hold on a second. And I think I have it now. Let's see. Maybe not. Let's see. There we go. I got a bad cable, I think. For those of you that know me, man, let me go back. For those of you that know me, you know I'm always talking about how I'm buying cables. I think I have a bad cable. This is like the second time in 2 days this has done this to me. So bad cable, maybe. All right, here's the 7 steps. The 7 steps to follow to build basically bulletproof workflows. Step number 1 is that you have to find the pain point. Find it. Now, when you know the pain point, it's easy to say, well, this is the process that I'm going to do. I always joke that in my business, man, the next thing that I want to fix is the thing I hate the most. It's that one thing you're like, if I have to do this one more time, I am quitting my business. I'm shutting it down. So I find the pain point. Well, what is it? Tonight I'm going to solve a pain point for my team. And the pain point that I want to solve is that what happens is when we have to sign contracts electronically, my team has to go in there and they have to say, well, sign here and sign here and sign here. And I don't want them to do that. I just want one signature on my contracts. I don't need 55 signatures, or at least I don't think I do. Maybe I do, but for now, I think I can just get away with one. I'm going to try it. So my pain point tonight is the whole getting contracts signed electronically. Now, what I always talk about is drawing out the process. You want to make sure that you know what you're going to do. And you'll see over here that there's like a demo picture of like the swim lanes that I use. I always draw up my processes in swim lanes. And in there, it allows me to build the foundation. I talk about drawing out this process, and what makes this whole part very important is that when you draw out the process, you know what you're going to build. You know what comes next. And the whole drawing of the process, I equate that to building a house. A builder would not just show up with a concrete truck and say, well, let's just pour the concrete here and we think it's going to be about this size. No, they take out their blueprints and they measure everything out and they know that this goes here and here and here. They have some idea. And the blueprint also shows them, well, when we're done, this is what the house is going to look like. This. If I built a house, because I'm a terrible builder, or at least I think I am, if I built the house, it'd be like, I don't know if you want to live in a house I built. Just kidding. So we build out our processes and we draw it out. And then what we're doing is we're thinking about the deliverables. What is it that we want this process to do? What do we want the process to do for us? Because when we know what that deliverable is, then it's easier to say, this is what success looks like. And even when you know that, you're still going to have to like mess around with the workflows to get it just the way that you want it. But you know what? It's not that hard. The next thing that we want to do is we want to think about what are the inputs that I need to capture. And what I mean by this is really every workflow that's there is nothing more than like a form. If you think about like work, okay, like workflow, if you think about this, everything is basically the moving of data from one person to another. That is really all that workflow is. It's taking someone's doing something, and then it all comes together for this finished deliverable. That's the deliverable we talked in the last step. So when you start to think about like, well, what are the inputs or what are the things I need to capture? That's step 4. Capture the inputs. Think about the fields because that's all it is. Everything is just a field. So when you capture that, you know exactly what it is that you're trying to deliver. Every workflow is going to also have an input. There's going to be some trigger input in there. And what I mean by that is, something always happens to start a workflow. The one that we're going to build tonight is that my team is going to create the contract. They're going to use some software that we use to print out the contract. We're going to have this PDF document. And what happens today is that PDF document, they go and they upload it to an electronic signing company. I think we use Right Signature. They upload it into Right Signature. Then they have to go in there and say, I want you to sign here and here and here and here. They have to go and do all these things. And I know you can create templates for this, but like I said earlier, I just want one signature. Just sign here that you and I agree to this document right there. So I'm going to show you how we do that. But tonight, what is our trigger? The trigger is that we have a document that needs to be signed. It's a simple trigger tonight, very simple one. The next thing that we're going to look at, step 6, is then after we know what we're trying to create and after we know what success looks like in the fields that we're trying to capture, now what we're going to do is we're going to build the workflow. So that's what we're going to do here is we're going to go and build the workflow. And after the workflow is complete, what you need to do is you need to start to think like the manager. And what does a manager do? Well, a manager's job is to monitor processes and revise as needed. I was reading in the Wall Street Journal the other day that Amazon, the company we all know, Amazon is getting a new CEO. And the article was talking about how one of the biggest challenges for the CEO, the new CEO of Amazon, is the fact that basically the entire organization is automated. Even the employees, the humans, are managed by automation. And in this article, they were talking about how every employee basically is given their assignment. Okay, like here's your assignment. Your job is to go to the shelves and get stuff off the shelves. Well, guess what? They have AI, artificial intelligence, cameras that basically follow them. And as they go to grab for something, it's taking pictures. The AI is taking pictures of it. And it's looking to see, are they grabbing the right thing or not? Are they taking too many breaks or not? Are they making too many mistakes, picking the wrong items, not picking them fast enough? And so the AI is calculating this entire thing. You know what the managers are doing? The managers are watching the computer system And the computer system will tell them, hey, Johnny needs some help. Johnny's making too many mistakes. Johnny's not picking the products at the right speed. Johnny's doing. So now the managers are not necessarily interacting with people. The AI, the AI is telling the managers who to automate or who to work with, like Johnny needs some help here. So I thought that was very, very interesting to be able to think about. Like, as a manager, my biggest job is really to step back and to look at the processes, to look at what we're doing in real time and look at the processes that I'm creating to say, this process needs help. And so that's what we're going to look at tonight, is we're going to run through the workflow and then circle back and make sure that it's working the way that we want. So normally I would go in there and I'd fill out this entire deck that I just showed you, but I do have the foundation. I've kind of drawn it out in advance for myself. So I do know what I'm going to go and build tonight. So without further ado, let's go into the tool that I'm going to use to build my workflows in. And the tool that I use is processmodo.com. So what you're looking at here is this is the home screen for processmodo.com. I shouldn't say home screen. This is my inbox for processmodo.com. And basically the way that this works is when you have a company, like when you have your own ProcessModo account, if you will, well, then basically what happens is every company has its own custom, URL up here. You'll see this is the URL for my company. And every employee or every user has their own inbox. So this is my inbox, and you'll see it's kind of clean today. But basically what happens is my workflows will magically appear on here. So as I build workflows and they show up, I can get emails. I can build workflows so that people get emails. But beyond that, what I'm looking at here is just the inbox. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go and I want to build a new form, because all workflows, as I said, start with a form. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to create a new form, and I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to call it eSign. We'll call it eSign test. You'll see I was messing around with that earlier. I don't provide form descriptions. I should maybe, but I don't. So that's good. Here's what we're going to do. Okay. Now, this is where I choose my fields. So what are some of the fields that I need to have here? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to, I need my team members to provide the name of the person that needs to sign the contract. That's an important piece, because ultimately, what we want to identify them by name. We also want to identify their email address. So we're going to need their email address. So far, those are the two fields that I need. I need their name and email address. I also need a field in order to attach the contract that I need them to sign. So I want them to be able to see the contract, get that contract, open it up and read it. And then I need to get one of those signature blocks so that they're signing. And I also do want to have a confirmation that says, hey, I agree that I'm signing via this way. So I kind of have 5 fields that I want to kind of put in here before I start to build the workflow. These are the events that I want to capture. Well, let's go do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and the first field that I said was their name. So we're going to put in their name. I also told you I wanted to collect their email address. I wanted to collect a file upload. I want to collect a consent. I want to collect a signature. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is basically what I want. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to put in, for the consent, I want to change this. Instead of saying I agree to the privacy policy, I want to say something like, I agree that the document presented to this process, or to this entry, is accurate. And down here, I'm just going to also say, I could put some further content in here, but just for tonight's purposes, I also want to say, I further agree to using this signature as a binding document. All right, so that's what I'm going to put right there. And I'm not going to put as required, because if I put it as required, then when we launch this workflow, that's going to have to be checked and I don't want it. And signature. So this is a very simple process form. Okay, so this is very simple. So I'm just going to hit update. Now that I have the form created, it's now time to go and to build the workflow. So what is the workflow? It's basically the steps that happen after the trigger. Well, what's the trigger? The way that I see this workflow going is my sales team will print out the documents, the contracts that we need signed. And I have a sample one here in a minute, I'll show you. They will print it out, it creates into a PDF document. We're gonna take that PDF document and we're going to upload it into this process modo. And when the form gets processed, we also wanna put in their name and their email address. So we're gonna, the salesperson is gonna put in the name, the email address, and also the file. At that point, that's the trigger. So after that event gets triggered, what I want to happen is I want an email to get generated to my buyer that says, hey, I need you to sign this document. Sign here. And I want them to be able to click the document and go in and sign the document. Now, the thing about Process Modo is this. What I'm not going to have is I'm not going to have my buyers, they're not going to have a Process Modo account, and they don't need one. So what will happen is Process Modo will in fact generate a link that they can click on, and it will take them to a page where they can sign and do everything all without having to create an account. That's what I want. So Process Modo will do that for me. I don't have to do anything. You'll see how this works here in a minute. So that's what we're trying to do. So let's go back and now build the workflow. And this is, I got to tell you, this whole building the workflow thing, this is sometimes some of the most difficult challenges. And Bryce, I see what you're saying. I was thinking the same thing as I was talking about this. What do you do if there's one signature for two buyers? I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix the form because I was just thinking the same thing. See, I thought I'd get away with it, but Bryce is calling me out. I was kidding. All right, here we go. Let's go back and fix it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change this, and I'm just going to say buyer one or signer one. I don't like to use the words buyer. No one wants to be a buyer. No one. Buyer one and buyer one email. And then what I would do is, actually, as I'm thinking about this, Bryce, what I'm thinking about doing as I'm just walking this through my brain on the two buyers is what I would probably do, what I could do is basically what we could do is we could either add the second buyers here. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add the two buyers here. What I could also do is I could create the workflow so that they have to submit the document twice, but I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to duplicate everything we have because I need two signature blocks, two consent blocks, two signer names, and two signer emails. Okay, so let's go back. That's the strategy I'm going to use. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to duplicate, 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 and duplicate. There we go. So now I've duplicated it. So now let's go in and dig a little bit further. So this is now going to be signer 2. Now, signer 2, this is going to look good. This looks fine. So I have signer 1, signer 2. So my salesperson is going to come here and say, Scott Todd, Bryce Hunter. There we go. And then, I'm just kidding, Bryce. I see you're sorry, man. It's all right. I was thinking the same thing. All right, so buyer 1 email address, buyer 2 email address. Now, here's what I don't want. What I don't want is I don't want buyer 2 email address to show up unless buyer 2 has a name. So I don't even want this field available unless in fact we're going to put this. And additionally, if I really wanted to create this correctly, what I might do, and I'm going to go do it right now, is I'm going to do this drop down right here. I'm going to put this drop down up here, and I'm going to say number of buyers. So it's going to be, and I always do this. I always say for my first choice, select one. Select one. There we go. And then I'm going to say one buyer, two buyers. There we go. So now what will happen is if they choose two buyers, well then signature 2 will show up, or signer 2 will show up here. Because otherwise, and you'll see what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, I'm going to conditionally use conditional logic. I'm going to say if number of buyers is equal to 2 buyers. So this field right here will not even show up for them to sign unless we put 2 buyers. Same thing with this one right here. And what I could do is I could just do it like this just to be cleaner. So buyer 1 email, signer 2, buyer 2 email, and I'm going to say, hey, do not appear. Only show this if the signature 2 or the number of buyers is equal to 2 buyers. There we go. All right, so the file is going to remain the same. They're going to view the same file, so that's not something I need to change. Consent 1, okay, so I'm going to duplicate my consent here. So I'm going to call this consent 1. I'm going to leave that, but I'm also going to call this consent 2. Why? Because consent signer 2. Because that's the consent field for the second signer. And additionally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a conditional, under advanced, I'm going to do a conditional logic there, and I'm going to say only show this field if the number of buyers is equal to 2 buyers. There we go. Signature, that's going to be signature 1, so that's fine. Signature 2, well, let's look at signature 2. Signature 2 is going to be conditional, and it's going to say only show if the number of buyers is equal to 2. You guys see how easy this is? And I do want to name this. I want to name the signature block 2 or buyer 2. Signature buyer 2. Wow, spell buyer correctly. There we go. Okay, so now I have a form that looks a lot better. And now we can go in and we can build the workflows. Now, I'm going to be critical of myself. Had I drawn this thing out, and I did draw it earlier, I have it right here, but like right here. And I thought about the number 2 as I was speaking it, but had I spent the time to build the foundation like I told you about the builder, well, I might have been able to think that through a little bit. But no worries, we can do it on the fly. You saw how we did it on the fly. All right, so back to the workflow. Now I'm in the settings area and I'm in the workflows. And you'll see I have some cool things. I can come in here and do form settings, confirmation. So different types of confirmations can hit notifications, personal data, iframes. So I can put this whole field or this form on a website, but workflows. This is where I'm working at right now in the workflows. So let's just call this buyer 1 signature. Okay, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the user input. I'm looking for this user input because I want the buyer to actually input something. So here I am. I'm on user input, but you'll see these are all my different options. But I'm going to use user input. And I don't want the step highlighted because that would highlight it on the inbox. I don't want to do conditional, anything conditional for this form or for this step. It's just going to go. And who is going to be assigned this work? Well, it's going to be assigned to the buyer 1 inbox. And well, what fields can they edit? Well, the only field that I want them to edit is I want them to be able to agree to the consent and also sign it. I don't want them being able to change the file or anything. I want them to be able to view the file, but I only want them to be able to consent and sign. That's it. And I do want them to be able to, let's see, it's saying display instructions. I do want to display instructions for them that basically says something to the effect of, please review the attached contract and sign below. There we go. Display all fields. Well, I don't really want them to display all the fields, so I'm going to hide the fields except select ones. And the only fields that I want them to be able to see are basically their name. So we'll put in their name and their email address. We're going to put in there the file so they can view the file, the consent, and the signature. That's all I want them to be able to see, the buyer one. That's all I want them to be able to see. I don't want them to be able to save their progress. They don't need to save the progress. If they want to exit out and read the contract, they can come back. I don't require workflow notes, but I do want to send them an email. And the email is going to say, your signature required. Your signature required. And the one thing that I like to do, I say this every week, the one thing I like to do is I like to add something here so that in their email box or my own email box, it's something custom. So you'll see it like your signature required and then their last name. And the reason that I do that is because most people are using Outlook or Gmail, and in those, they basically have it so that the emails stack. And so one of the reasons that they stack is because of the subject line. It stacks all the same subject lines. So if every email that I sent said your signature required, well then everything's going to be stacked. I'll never find anything. But at least where it's the last name, it separates it out. I could also use maybe like even the entry ID number, because every entry has its own unique entry ID number. I could do that too. It just depends. I'm just going to stick with the last name so that, it's something unique there. Okay. Back to the form. Now, this is the email message that they will get. And this is the default message, and I don't want them to have the default message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to say, hello, and then I'm going to use the drop down right here for their name. Hello, Scott, for example. And I'm going to leave them a little message attached, or I'm going to say, please click the link below to sign our contract for the purchase. If you have any questions, please call me at, and I'm just going to make up a phone number here. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in here a link so that they can come in and sign the document. Now, the way that the links work is right down here. You'll see these are all the fields that I could actually populate into this email. But one of the things I'm going to do is right down here under workflow, one of the items that I have is the entry link. And that's what I want to give them. I want to give them the entry link. And the reason I want to do that is because when they get this, what will happen is they will have the entry link, and then they'll be able to click it, and it will take them to a website where they don't have to enter a username or password. It's going to take them to a platform so that they can do it all from the front end. And then I'm just going to sign it by saying thanks, and then Scott. So this is the email that they will get. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to set a reminder here. And the reminder is going to say, hey, look, if they haven't signed this email, or if they haven't completed their task within 1 day, we'll then send them another email and remind them every 1 day. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the technology hound them. Too many times when we have contracts, people are like, what do I have to do? Like, do I keep calling them? They're not signing it. I let the technology handle it. Hey, sign this, buddy. Now, there is a way that I could have this workflow expire. I could have it kick out and say, well, if they didn't sign it, and I'll show you where that field is here in a minute. I'm not going to do it, but I'll show you where it is. I could also say, like, if they didn't sign this within 72 hours, that it kicks it out of their workflow or out of them, and it kicks it back up to a manager that says, hey, they didn't sign it. Or I could have it go another route and then circle back to them. So another message might get sent to them and say, hey, listen, this thing's going to expire soon, circle back. So you can have the technology route all of this workflow back so that you're not having to do it. But think like the Amazon manager. I would rather deal with the one-offs like this as opposed to hover over Johnny going, Johnny, you're getting the wrong item off the shelf. You see, like I can get alerted when I need to be proactive and let everything else work on behalf of the technology or through the technology. So that's the goal. Let's come over here. You'll see that I could create a custom confirmation, and you'll see that the default confirmation is thank you. And I might say something like, thank you, we will be in touch with you soon, or I can change it. I'm not going to. All right, but they could get a custom thing, a default date, like if this isn't done within so many hours, change the color on the inbox, and then this is the expiration I was talking about. If it's not done by whatever time, I can move it to another workflow or mark it expired or complete. I can do many different things. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is when the buyer has signed the document, it needs to move on to the next step. And what is the next step? Well, buyer 1 signs. It now needs to move on to buyer 2 for signature. So basically, buyer 1 signs, it moves to buyer 2. But, and there's a big but, what if there's no buyer 2? Okay, does it break? Well, not if we write it correctly. So let's go up here. We'll go back over here. Let's go back to our workflow. I'm going to hit the workflow link here, and I can see that I have buyer 1 signature. Now, instead of having to rewrite the entire thing, all I'm going to have to do is come over here and hit duplicate. And I'm going to come over here, I'm going to edit, and I'm just going to change this to buyer 2 signature. And now at this point, I'm just tweaking my process. So instead of buyer 1 signing this thing, I want buyer 2 to sign it, buyer 2. But look at this. I also need to only have this go if there is a second buyer, right? So this is where the condition comes in. And the condition is going to say only perform this step if the number of buyers is 2. So if the workflow gets to this point and there's only 1 buyer, well, then process modo is going to say, there's only 1 buyer. I don't need to perform this step. Therefore, it's done. But if there's 2 buyers, it will continue to do this step. And that's what we want. So you'll see there's a lot of logic built in here. And what I'm doing is now I just need to say that the only fields that I want to be edited by the buyer 2 is not consent 1 and signature 1, but in fact consent 2 and signature 2. So see, I'm just tweaking the process here a little bit. So this is showing the comments that I want perfectly on the instructions. Now here's the fields. And I'm saying hide all of the fields except for these. Well, that's not what I want anymore. What I want is I want to show, like I want to get rid of all the buyer 1 stuff. Oh, I should have left the field there, the file. So buyer 1, signer 1, buyer 2 email. I need them to see that. I want the consent for buyer 2 and also the signature. So I'm just tweaking this as we go. I really don't need to tweak this. Oh, I do too, because, well, see, do I want the last name for this one to be the buyer 1's name? Maybe, yeah, maybe that's okay, because that way in my inbox it will be there. I do want to change this field though. And what I want to change this to is not signature or signer 1. I want to change this to signer 2. So come down here and just say signer 2 first name, signer 2 first name. All this looks good. The link will be the same. That's fine. Send the reminder messages. Boom, I'm done with that. So you see, now that I have the first workflow done and it was just tweaking the second one, I was just tweaking it. And at this point, in fact, I think that the process is done, unless there's one more thing. Unless what I really want to do is I want to send a notification to the team that says, it's done. And that's what I want, is I want the team to be notified, because otherwise what will happen is if I don't have a notification kicked off, then no one's going to know that it was done. Like, it will just get done. But I want the next step in the process to start working. Well, the next step in my process is that this gets kicked over. The salesperson needs to know that it's done so they don't have to panic. But I also want this information going over to the accounting team so they can start to do their work. So let's look at how we do that. And it's a quick, simple workflow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to workflows. I'm going to add a new workflow here. And I'm just going to call this accounting. Or better yet, I could call it docs signed. There we go, docs signed. And what I want here is I want a notification to go out. Now, I could also have this trigger another workflow. So I could have it send an outgoing webhook. That outgoing webhook could come back into Process Modo and trigger another workflow if I have another workflow set up. So I have a lot of different options here what I can do. But the notification that I want to go out is I'm going to do a workflow notification, and I want my accounting team, and this is a role. What I mean by role, like this is a team of people. You see like ad poster, ad writer, senior accounting team. So everybody in the senior accounting team would get that. And also, so that's fine. We'll just do that one. And I'm just going to say down here, I'm just going to say docs signed. And I'm going to put in maybe their names. So last name, yeah, last name, that's fine. I'm just going to come in here and say the documents for this sale are complete. There we go. And I could expand that later, and you'll see it saying, well, after I send this notification, what's the next step? And I always leave it, unless I'm truly ending the workflow, like I know for a fact it's going to be over with, I always leave it next step. And the reason I do that is because if I ever go in there and tweak the workflow and add something else, and it's already defaulted to say next workflow, then it's one less thing that I have to worry about and think about. So that's the way I really try to focus on this, is I just leave myself room for expansion. I'm going to update the step, and there's one more thing that I want to do. I want to come over here back to my workflow box. And the thing is that some workflows typically get triggered like one of three ways. The first way that a workflow would get triggered is it could be triggered on a date or a time or an event. So what I mean by that is this workflow might get triggered on Monday morning, 8 a.m. That's a time event. A workflow event might say, well, when you get an email from this, like from Zapier, for example, maybe I get a trigger from Zapier. That's kind of an internal event-driven kind of a workflow. So that's the first one, like it's event-driven. The second one, the second type of trigger that we'll use sometimes is an internal, I call it like an internal push. Because what I'm going to do is my team is going to go to this form. They're going to do something like, here's the documents that need to get signed. I'm going to put in the name, put in the email address, put in the file that needs to be signed. Well, that's my internal team pushing it out, the work out. And then the last event, the third bucket, if you will, is what I would call a pull. And the pull would come in from like an external form or a form that is available to the public. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually showed you how you might receive an intake offer from a seller, for example, an intake offer from a seller. Well, if I had this intake offer coming in from a seller, well, then that's the seller using an internal Process Modo form, a public form is what we call it, public post is what we call it. And in that public post, it's available to anybody. If they have the right link, they can just go in there and submit the form. So in this case, I need to have a internal form that gets pushed or triggered by my team. So the way that I'm going to do that is under workflows here, I'm going to tell Process Modo that I want my team to be able, right here, I want my team to be able to submit this form, internally submit this form. And if we come back into our workflows and I come to submit, for example, well, these are all of the internal forms that can be pushed or submitted by my team. You'll see e-sign test, that's the form that we were doing. So now what I have here is I have this available to my team so that at any time, my team could just come here to submit, scroll down to the e-sign test, and of course I wouldn't call it test, I'd call it like e-sign. And then this is the form that they would see. Well, now let's go and mess with our form a little bit. Now, right off the bat, here's what I'm seeing. Right off the bat, you'll see, like, I do see where this says select one, and this says signer one, buyer one. I should have named them the same thing, but I didn't. The file, but you'll see I see the two consents here. That's not right. Okay, like this second consent should not be shown unless this says buyer two. By the way, because this is a working session, I would expect that I make mistakes, okay? Like this is what step 7 says of the 7-step process, is that I'm gonna go through there and monitor and revise as needed. Well, I need to revise a little bit. So let's go do some testing and then see what else we need to revise before we jump in and revise it. So what I expect to happen is if I say buyer 2 here, if I say buyer 2, well then I should see signer 2 show up, which I do. I should see buyer 2 email show up, which I do. All right, this one's out of whack. But look at this, I got 3 consents? I must have messed up. And then I have 2 signature blocks. So obviously I got happy with the duplicate button. I didn't see it. And Bryce didn't call me out on it. Just kidding. So clearly we all missed it. Clearly, no, none of you saw it because you would have called me out on it, right? All right, let's go in there and fix it. Let's go. We're gonna go to the e-sign test. We're gonna edit it. Scroll down and look at this. Sure enough, I got 2 of these consent boxes. So we're gonna delete one of them. Let me just make sure that this is, in fact, this one was working. Yep, that one's fine. And look, I'm gonna do this. Let's just call this, instead of buyer 1 email, which I told you I don't like anybody being called a buyer. Let's just call it signer, just to bring some consistency. Signer 1 email, signer 2. Signer 2 email, there we go. Consent signer 2, signature signer. And I don't even really need that signer 2 because no one's gonna see it except for internal. But anyway, we're just gonna leave it. Okay, back to my inbox, back to the submit option, scrolling down to the e-sign test. Now let's look at our form. Now I've got number of buyers, signer 1, much better. File, consent, signer. Okay, I think I wanna make one more change. And the change I wanna make is that I don't want this consent and this signature to even appear for my team. I guess I don't have a choice. Yeah. Let me look at something. I just want to look at one thing. I got an idea. I don't like that because I don't want the team to get confused. And I don't want them signing anything, even though they should know better. I just want to see if I can clean it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I just want to look at some of my options because I think I could possibly even change something here. So this is the one I'm talking about. And let me just come over to the advanced and come to the enable. And I'm just exploring here. Show this field if okay, hide this field. No, I guess I can't. Well, what I could, no, it's not even letting me do that. Okay, all right. Well, I guess I don't have a choice. All right, I got to have them look at that because I would much rather them not even be able to see it. So I'll have to work with the team to tell them what I like. Okay, back to the submit button. Let's go do this for real now. There are going to be, let's just say 1 buyer for now. Scott, I'm just gonna call it Scott Test. And the email address is going to be test@landmodo.com. And the file that I'm gonna submit here is going to be in my downloads file. And it's this agreement right here. And what happened to the consent? What? I gotta go look. What did I do? Consent. I did something. Yeah, I got to take that off. Okay. There we go. Now let's go back and choose the file. That's fine. And I'm just going to hit submit. So my team would come in here. They'd put the buyer one, the email address, or the name, the email address, the file that we want signed, and then they're going to hit submit. And obviously you'll see it says, thanks, we'll get in touch with you. And I could customize this if I wanted to. And if I go look at my inbox should still be finished, it should be empty. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop over to my email for a second, and I'm gonna spare you guys the pain of looking at my email. And I'm gonna go into here, and I do have an email, and the email is basically saying, I'll share it with you over here. Here it goes. So that basically, here's the email. It says, please click the following. This is what we wrote. If you have any questions, please call me at that made up phone number, and you'll see it says entry. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna copy that link. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because I actually wanna use incognito mode for this so that it's as if I'm not logged in. Okay, so I want to treat this as if I'm not logged in. And in an incognito mode, it will do that. So I copied that link, and this is where it took me. This is acting as if I was buyer one, and you can't see it. Now you can see it. You couldn't even see the email. Okay, sorry. Here's the email. Here's the email that that went out. I copied that link that says entry, and what it did was it took me to this, and now I'm in this incognito mode here. And this is what my buyer is actually seeing. Buyer one is seeing this. So it's saying signer one, your name, your email address, which this, I don't even know if I need to show them this. I don't know, I think it's kind of nice, but maybe not. Here's my instructions. Please review the attached. You know what would be really, really, really cool? Really cool to include in the instructions there is a video from me saying, thank you. Thank you. Now sign the contract below and let's get going. Like, think about that. Instead of just typing something there in that instruction box, I could literally embed a video. I can put a video in there, and what will happen is I will magically appear. Think about that for a minute. Think about the customer experience when you do that. All right. That looks good. Now, as the buyer, I'm going to click on this, and here's the documents, and look at this. Here's my documents. I'm seeing these documents. Now, normally what happens is the buyer comes in here and, all right, I got to sign this one and sign all this one. And I might need to just have something that says like signature. Maybe I would customize these a little bit that says like one signature electronically or something. I would just change these docs up just a little bit, just to reference that's what I'm going to do. And then, of course, I'm going to agree to it. I'm going to check that I agree to it, and I'm going to sign my name. There we go. And then I'm just going to hit submit. And because this is one, and you'll see it says it's been updated and marked complete. And again, what I could do is I could put a custom message here that says like, thank you, you're now done. So that's good. And let me do this. Let me come back to me for a minute. Let me go see if I get an email that says, and I did here, I got an email here that basically says, hey, the documents for this sale are done. So this is what the bookkeeper would get. The accounting team and the salesperson would get this email showing that in fact the work was done. Now, let's do it again. And what I want to do the second time is I want to put two buyers. So I just want to make sure that the system works correctly. So how many buyers? There's going to be two of them. It's going to be Scott, test, and that's going to be test at landmodo.com. And then I'm going to call it, and remember, signature 2 now, or signer 2 now appears because I said that there was two buyers. So we'll just call it, Walt Disney. And his email address is going to be walt@landmodo.com. And we're going to attach the file that needs to be reviewed and signed. There we go. And I still don't like that, but that's good enough. Okay, so now my team can come down here and hit submit. And what's going to happen is Process Moto will process it. Hopefully an email will go to buyer number 1, which is test. So the test can come back in there. I'm going to flip back over. Where does the signature actually go? Maybe a premature question. Okay, I'll show you this. Here, before I go sign, I'll show you where it goes, Bryce. Here's where it goes. Under status, over here under status. See, I can come over here and I can say this one was complete. And remember, I can sort by all of these forms. So I can come down here and say, hey, I want the workflow that's the e-sign test, and I want and see, like, I can even search by this stuff. I can search by date if I wanted to, and I could come in here and say apply. Well, now it's going to show me the 2 that I have. Now I can even drill down further and go, yeah, I want it where the guy's last name was test, and apply that. So see, I have a whole record here. Remember, both these are going to say test, and I could come in here and click on this, and there's the signature. And here's the whole timeline of everything that happened and transpired. Here's the agreements, all right there, all together. Shows me when it was submitted, when it was completed, and it shows me that it went to their email address on file. And I think if I click on here, I even get a little bit greater, more detail. Yeah, you'll see that it says that who it was emailed to. So I have a whole email log of everything that transpired on there, even in greater detail. So not bad, not bad. Not bad, right? All right. Does it not go on the PDF? It does not go on the PDF. It's held separately. So, basically you have it. That's the way it would work. Okay, and by the way, you can pre-sign your own documents too. You could pre-sign your own, or you could even include yourself as a signer in there, and then they would actually have access back to it, I believe, through that link. I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me paste that link in there real fast. And the link that they use to sign it, I'm just going to paste that over here in the incognito mode. And no, I guess they don't have access to it once it's completed. So I think what we could do too is you could build another workflow you could build another workflow that would email the document to them, another like email notification. Here's the document that's been signed. So you could do that too. Okay. Let me go back over to my email for a minute, because remember we started the 2-signer test, and you'll see here that basically I have this email now that's this one. I have this email here that says, hey, your signature is required. This is to Scott Test. Again, I'm going to copy that link so that I could come in here and paste it as if I don't have an account. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Boom. And now I'm signing as signer 1. I have the agreement here. I've got this. I'm just going to sign it, hit submit. And now it's telling me that the workflow is complete. And by the way, they could also print this too if they wanted to, or you could print it. So that workflow is complete. And what I would expect to happen, what should happen, is the workflow should now kick over to Mr. Disney for his signature. And so the thing is that if I go back into my email, I should now see that there's an email, and I do see it. There's an email here that says, hello, Walt, to complete the contract, do this. I'm going to right click this, and I'm just going to copy the link again. And the only reason I'm copying the link is because if I click it and I'm logged in, then it's going to see that I'm logged in. I just want to test this as if I'm the buyer. And of course, this is Walt Disney signing. Here's the agreement. He's only seeing his stuff. And I'm going to come over here, sign, hit submit. That completes the workflow. And then here in Process Moto, again, I could let me close this window out. I could come back to my workflows, look at my status, and the status is going to tell me that this particular one is also complete. Now, one of the things that I'm a big believer in is I'm a big believer in looking for the bottlenecks. I want to see where the holes are or where the bottlenecks are in my business. Oftentimes, I always joke that I'm the biggest bottleneck in my business. And sometimes it's nice to be able to have some reporting capability. And again, Remember Amazon. I just stay with the Amazon analogy. You got the manager coming to looking at Johnny only when there's a problem. And that's what I want to do is I don't have AI cameras looking at my people, but I do have process moto. And so what I'll do is I will sit here and I will look at the reporting capability. And the nice thing about the reporting capability, when it loads, there it goes, is I can come in here and I can look actually and get greater detail even by workflow. So for example, we just talked about the e-sign test. And I can look at it even by month, and I'm just going to filter this. And you'll see that so far in February, I've run 2 of these tests, and the time to complete the transaction has averaged 0.06 hours. Now, what's cool about this is I can even take this a step further and look at the assignees. And I can see that, that Scott at Landmoto, or Tess at Landmoto, took the longest amount of time and Walt was the fastest. I could even come in here and look by step because the assignee in this case really isn't going to matter. But look at this. I could come in here and look to see how fast this work was completed and at each step. So at any given time, you're able to go in there and manage the process. Where are the bottlenecks? Because when you identify the bottlenecks in your processes, now all of a sudden your entire system gets faster. In the business metric called Six Sigma, there's a metric in there called tack time. And the thing about tack time is you're looking at the time it takes to complete every single step. Because what you're always looking for is you're looking to make the whole process better. I use this reporting capability to figure out where is the bottleneck. Is it me? Is it one of my team members? Are things breaking down? And now all of a sudden, I now have some business analytics and metrics that I can actually go in there and use. Okay, so this is how I'm building my business, and I'm using so many of the workflows that we create here every Thursday within my business. It's easy, and the tool again that I'm using, as you saw tonight, is Process Moto. Now, Process Moto is available. You can sign up for it. You can create an account and start creating your own processes. Every process that we're working to create, we're building into a process universe library so that you'll be able to download the process and upload it into your own account. And if you're interested in using Process Moto, well, you can use the link that I just provided in the chat or go to processmoto.com/pricing, and you can create an account now and start automating your businesses. And you know what? I'm going to see you here next Thursday. So next Thursday, we'll automate something else. And if you have a process that you would like to have automated, then send it to me, email it to me. You have my email address, email it to me, and let's build a process for your business and show you how easy it is to get going. The most important thing though, is that you sit down, start building your processes using that 7-step methodology that I teach, and I think you'll find it way, way easier. With that, I appreciate you guys joining tonight. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you guys next week, if not sooner. Take care. Good night.